In 1975, the Bears drafted running backs with their first and last selections. Roland Harper wasn't much bigger than Walter Payton, but he was a highly effective blocker for him. He rushed for 86 tough yards in this 1975 game against the defending Super Bowl champion Steelers. His best rushing season was 1978, when he had 992 yards. He also chipped in with a career-high 43 receptions. A much bigger fullback was Jim Braxton of the Buffalo Bills, who played in the NFL from 1971 through 1978. His best year was 1975, when he had 823 rushing yards, 9 rushing touchdowns, and 4 receiving touchdowns. After just 1 rushing attempt in Week 1 of the following season, he injured his knee and was placed on the injured reserve list for the remainder of the season. He was never the same player after that. Pete Johnson was an even bigger fullback than Braxton. He weighed anywhere between 255 and 280 pounds. He led the Bengals in rushing yardage every year he played with them, from 1977 through 1983. His career rushing high was 1,077 yards, and his 76 career rushing touchdowns are 25th best all time. Next up is the human bowling ball, Don Nottingham, who is aptly nicknamed. A 1971 17th round draft pick out of Kent State, he played 7 years in the NFL. Nottingham's NFL career ended in August 1978 after he broke his left shoulder blade and was placed on the injured reserve list. He was a long shot to stay on the eventual 1971 Super Bowl winning Colts. Even the old master, superstar quarterback John Unitas, had his doubts. On October 2, 1973, Nottingham was traded to the Miami Dolphins with the 1974 6th-round draft pick, who ended up being defensive end Randy Crowder out of Penn State, for running back Hubert Ginn. Norm Bulash was another Colts fullback who ended up playing for the Dolphins. He was 6 foot 1 inch, 218 pounds, and had a lot more speed than Nottingham. This 1971 footage is from his only Pro Bowl season, which was his best. 741 rushing yards, 8 rushing touchdowns, and an excellent 4.9 yards per carry. Bulash played from 1970 through 1979 and put up respectable statistics. 3,362 rushing yards, 30 rushing touchdowns, along with 1,766 receiving yards and 11 receiving touchdowns. In 1975, future Hall of Fame fullback Larry Zanka left the Dolphins in order to play in the World Football League. Don Nottingham and Norm Bulash combined to rush for 1,027 yards and 22 rushing touchdowns from Zonka's old fullback position. Charlie Herway was a low 18th round draft pick by the Browns in 1966. At 6 foot 2 inches, 215 pounds, he was an average size fullback for that era. In 1969, he was sold to Washington, and it was there that he flourished. He averaged 531 rushing yards in his 5 seasons there. His 55 pass receptions in 1969 was 6th best in the NFL, but he was best known for his highly effective blocking, especially for superstar running back Larry Brown. Ruby Clark was a 12th round draft pick out of Bethune-Cookman in 1973. He was a big fullback whose 988 rushing yards in 1973 was 8th best in the NFL, and he had the 4th most touches in the league. Despite being a large man, he was an adept receiver. His 45 catches were the 11th most in 1973. Jim Otis didn't do much in his first 4 NFL seasons. Only 721 rushing yards and 1 rushing touchdown. but he broke out in 1975 when he led the NFC with 1,076 rushing yards. Despite being a powerfully built fullback, he only had 19 career rushing touchdowns, with 8 of them coming in 1978, his last year in the NFL. Jim Bertelsen wasn't the biggest fullback in the NFL when he entered it in 1972 after being a second-round draft choice from the University of Texas. He rushed for 33 touchdowns in 3 years there. His best pro season was 1973 when he ran for the 8th most yards in the NFC, 854. He was named to the NFC's Pro Bowl team at the end of that 1973 season. Unfortunately, he had knee surgery in 1975 and it cut his career short. John Calleti was the 1973 Heisman Trophy winner, and he took over for the injured Jim Bertelsen at fullback. He was a very capable rusher as well as receiver. He caught 41 passes in 1978. Bryant was yet another highly effective Rams fullback. In 1978 and 1979, he combined for 1,277 rushing yards and 12 rushing touchdowns. Malone is largely a forgotten fullback from the 1970s. His brother Benny is probably much more well known, but Art was no slouch. In 1972, it was his best season when he rushed for 798 yards and 8 touchdowns while catching 50 passes for 585 yards and an outstanding 11.7 average. His 6.0 yards per touch was the third best in the NFL. Check out Art Malone's lead block here. He knocks number 55 linebacker Doug Buffone back 3 yards onto the ground. Malone and number 43 Dave Hampton combined for 2,622 rushing and receiving yards in 1972. 1970s fullbacks did a lot of dirty work, but didn't receive much glory. Please check out my awesome video entitled, "These 1960s and 1970s NFL fullbacks are so underrated." I'm sure you'll like it.